What's up, everybody? I'm John Middlekauff. You know what I need you to do. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We got content for days reacting to every NFL game all the time, every single day. Subscribe, like the videos. Let's go. What is going on, everybody? Happy Sunday Night Football. And by all accounts, it truly looks like I don't think a human being would have believed this if I would have told them this 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. The Detroit Lions might be a team of destiny. Absolute incredible victory. Jared Goff throws 5 interceptions. They're getting destroyed at halftime. Somehow the game ends. They have a walk-off field goal. And the Detroit Lions go to what? 8-1. And the Texans have a lot of issues. Blow a game that is going to be very, very difficult for them to shake for a while at home. That's a couple straight losses now. You lose to the Jets on the road in a game you should have won. You lose a game at home, Sunday Night Football against the Lions that you definitely should have won. D'Amico, who I'm a big believer in D'Amico Ryans, has got his work cut out for him because the Texans obviously got some problems, but we will dive into the game. I want to do a little thing called Disaster Watch and just go through some teams. I went out with Colin and we talked about some of them, but I just got to go more in depth. The Bears, the Jets, the Cowboys, the Jags, and Mac Jones' performance today. And then we just got to, raise our glass, give a standing O to a couple coaches. One guy who's on the forefront of most people's mind when it comes to football for 15 plus years, but another guy who is just having a fantastic season. That partly because of where he coaches, I just don't think quite gets enough spotlight. But these last 2 weeks, what a performance by this guy. So we will dive into that. And yeah, what a it's been a long football. Whenever you have that morning game, I watched your boy. I might have been chasing a little bit. I definitely was chasing after LSU screwed me on Saturday night. Had a few cocktails, put a bunch of money because I was down kind of big on the Panthers and didn't quite realize I did that until I went to the bathroom at like 4 a.m. and I looked. I'm like, I got a Panthers bet here in about 3 hours. So got up, watched that game, and it was awesome. Panthers plus 6.5, easy cover. So it's been a long, long day of football here at the Middlekauff household. But before we dive into football, I got to tell you about my friends, my partners in the official ticketing app of this podcast, Game Time. Listen, I saw, so did you if you were watching the Sunday night game. How many Lions fans were at that game? Lions fans everywhere. And here's the thing. If you want to go to a game, you want to go to a road game. See your team on the road. Just download that Game Time app. You can go to any venue, concerts, comedy shows, obviously college as well. LSU might suck, but God, that stadium looks like a lot of fun. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account and use the code JOHN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code JOHN for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. That Sunday night game was that was cool. I mean, it really was, because at halftime, I leave my office and I go to dinner. And I go, we might be able to fire this podcast up midway through the fourth quarter. This might just be one of those games. The Lions go 13-4, and they get blown out 38-13. Sunday Night Football, perfect storm against a desperate Texans team. Totally understandable. Jared Goff just has the worst performance of his season. Probably hurts his MVP chances. Might even knock him out of the MVP race. But when it's all said and done, people will forget this game. It'll be a big win for the Texans in the big picture grand scheme of things. It happens. And then all of a sudden, the second half gets weird. I just want to read a stretch starting in the first half until midway through the second half. It goes like this. It's 13-7. Interception. Texans field goal. Punt, punt, punt. Touchdown Texans. So you got 23-7. Interception, Hail Mary, coming out of the half, start of third quarter. Interception, punt, touchdown, interception, punt, punt, punt. 23-20, then it gets weird. I do think just on a big picture thought when it comes to the Lions, part of the reason I love football, why football guys, when you hear them talk, coaches, executives, former players, speak so highly of the actual game, is there's nothing quite like it. It truly is the ultimate team game. You can pick your teammates up. You can pick one of the units on your team up. You can have a bad half on one side of the ball, and in the second half, it can flip flop, and it takes everybody. It truly does. But if I told you that a team was going to be down 23-7 at half, and that team's quarterback would throw 5 interceptions, what would you imagine the final score would be? You'd probably say 45-10, right? But instead, they win 26-23. And I think that game is a great example of great teams. And Collinsworth was talking about it, just like I think great, successful human beings, successful companies have a lot of grit and mental toughness. Sometimes shit is not going to go your way. Sometimes life is going to throw you a curveball and it's going to suck. Sometimes things are going to happen that are out of your control and there's nothing you can do about it. And sometimes you create a mess. And I think that Lions game was everything. Jared Goff was off. Some random stuff was happening, like balls getting tipped, flying into their arms. Their offense, clearly, the cohesion wasn't there. Defensively, they were just kind of a mess. And it just looked like a disaster. But the one thing Dan Campbell has preached, going back to that 3-13 team, whatever, 4 years ago, to the team we have seen blossom all through last year, go to the NFC Championship game, and this year, what looks to be the NFC frontrunner, is mental toughness. And they ain't going to quit. Win or lose that game in the second half, if that game had not gone their way, but they had still come back and they had lost by a field goal, you know what my takeaway would have been? The same thing. That team's tough to knock out. I mean, they ain't tapping out. They're like a UFC fighter that I don't give a shit what you do. He ain't tapping on the ground. It's like the anti Anthony Richardson. Like, I'm not tapping. You're going to have to knock me all the way out. And that's what I thought tonight. The Lions just showed this unrelenting will to play till the final second of the game. And I think a lot of teams, a lot of average teams, obviously a lot of below average teams, which is understandable, go into the tank. They just kind of wilt. And I think it's fair to say that most of the time, the Lions in these situations, most of my life, fall apart and get blown out. But the version that we saw last year, and I'd even argue this year's version is different than last year's version. Because I saw last year's team get blown out a couple times. And it would have been understandable. Like I said, perfect circumstances. On the road, desperate team, a good team, raucous environment. You just come off a massive win on the road in an ugly environment at Green Bay. Like, if you had to pick one of the two games to win, you would pick Green Bay over this Houston game. So they already took care of business. It was like, okay, so it's not going their way. And then their defense gets a couple turnovers. So when you see the 5 interceptions, I'd push back and say it's neutralized a little bit because CJ gave 2 back in the second half as well. So they almost cancel each other out. And one big difference that was on full display tonight is I do think, I'm not saying he's obviously this player or even this level of player, but Peyton Manning threw an ugly ball. He threw a wobbly ball. It was like a wounded duck, but he was extremely accurate. And what else was he? Extremely mentally tough. How many times? I remember there was a game, Peyton Manning against the Chargers. I think when I was in college, that Peyton threw 5 or 6 interceptions. I think the Colts ended up losing the game, but they came storming back. Like, it was really, really hard to just break Peyton. And I do think there are some qualities of the version of we're seeing with Jared Goff that have some similarities. Cannot move at all. I mean, actually, he can move a little bit better than Peyton. Had a nice little first down scramble tonight, but he's not a good athlete relative to NFL players. Does not really even throw that pretty of a ball. was throwing wobbly balls all night long. But you know what he consistently did tonight, especially in the second half? Hit guys in their hands. Gave guys a chance to make catches nonstop. Jameson Williams made an unreal catch getting kind of, smashed between 2.5 guys, right? And the ball's all over the map like a wounded duck. And I learned a lot about Jared Goff, who's obviously made huge strides in the last couple years in terms of like elevating his play, becoming a household name, reestablishing himself as one of the better players. I thought tonight, I mean, he's had some games where he doesn't throw any completion, throws a bunch of tough touchdowns. You could argue tonight, just in terms of learning about somebody, if I'm Dan Campbell and you saw the embrace they had when Bates kicks the game-winning field goal, it's like you want to be in the trenches with that guy because you can't break this guy. It can't get any worse. He could play 100 more games in a career. He's not going to throw 5 interceptions. And most guys, rightfully so, just crumble. And he didn't. And clearly their team does not. And obviously we know how talented their team is offensively. Like at any moment, they need to drive. Hit St. Brown. Hit Jameson Williams. Hit Gibbs. I mean, there was a play. I don't like, if you're going to try, you're cool with kicking a field goal, running toss plays. It could have bit him in the ass. It ended up not because Bates hit a 58-yard field goal. But like if you are going to run it and are cool with running it on a couple downs, and I know sometimes the Lions hit toss plays for big gains because you get him in space, he hits a crease. But in that spot, under 4 or 5 minutes to go, Gibbs ended up running backwards. Just run. Even if you're going to go outside, run like just traditional outside zone that basically triggers the guy on the snap to get downhill and then pick his lane. But when you do the toss, if someone misses a block, that thing can get ugly fast. They got lucky there. I know a lot of people probably on their couch are being critical of Gibbs for running back. I put that on Ben Johnson, who clearly is a brilliant offensive coordinator. To me, in that spot, if you're going to run the ball, all for it. Do something that just gets downhill. Listen, you get stopped, you get stopped. Someone breaks behind the line of scrimmage and you get a negative 1 yard gain. So be it. But give the guy a chance to get full speed downhill. When you go the toss play, you're getting to like, you're going east and west right away. So even my natural move, and if something goes wrong, it could just be a disaster fast. We see it sometimes like when a quick screen or a jailbreak screen to a wide receiver, shit, just falls apart and he kind of freaks out because a guy missed a block. He starts running the wrong way. I would take that out. And I think I would imagine Ben Johnson would like that back. Now, it ended up not costing him because Bates hits a long field goal. And then clearly at the end of the game, hits another long field goal after the Texans. It's tough, when your kicker, and I saw this with the 49ers, when your kicker, you hit it the upright, you barely miss. Like it's football, it happens. When you miss a kick by a million feet, it's a pretty big kick in the nuts. Like as a fan, as someone just watching, if you're gambling on the game and that kicker, basically kicks it out of bounds, it's tough. And that kick didn't have a shot. And I know he's hit some big kicks before for the Texans, but as someone tweeted at me, when he misses this year, he's missed bad, and that was a bad miss. Now, Bates is also flirting with the upright, but he got both in when he needed to. And the reason they were in that position, I mean, the Texans didn't score in the second half. And one thing you see tonight, like, let me just look at the box score. Jared Goff did not get sacked. Think about that. Jared Goff, of all like the top, let's just say 20 quarterbacks, hell, just all the starting quarterbacks in the NFL. How many quarterbacks in the NFL, of the 32 starters, would you say Jared Goff is a better athlete than? It would be a really, really short list. Flacco. I mean, even the guys that stink, like Daniel Jones, excellent athlete. Jared Goff is not a good athlete. So what do? They build an excellent offensive line. He gets rid of the ball fast. He knows his limitation. Does not get sacked. Meanwhile, CJ Stroud, who actually is, I don't think we quite knew this at Ohio State, but then he went to the combine and we're like, this guy's a really good athlete, is just getting destroyed. 4 more sacks tonight, running around for his life. The one play where his own offensive lineman tried to strip him. I think Laramie Tunsil, I don't know how well he's playing this year. Whenever I watch him, it feels like he can be a little hit or miss. But clearly, has been a really, really good player over the course of his career. I feel like their guards and center, that interior part of their offensive line is just having a lot of trouble. and just their offensive line. Like part of it is a unit. Like you can have weak links, but if you play well as a group, you can overcome it, especially if your quarterback understands it and gets rid of the ball. I mean, one thing Collinsworth talked about as down the stretch of that game is like, CJ, you can't hold on to the ball super long in these situations. And when they got a big first down on that final drive that put him in field goal range, what did he do? 1-2, boom, get rid of the ball to Mechie, who, what an incredible story to overcome cancer, have a touchdown tonight. That was a really, really cool moment. But the Texans were a team that I thought was going to flirt with the number one overall seed. Now they're 6-4. They're going to win the division because it's in such shambles. But man, they got problems. They really do. Their defense makes a lot of plays. They're really well coached because of D'Amico, but offensively, Slowick, something's just off. And I get they've been missing Nico Collins, who's an elite player. Diggs is now out for the season, but you would think with Mixon, with a high-end quarterback, not necessarily right now, but in theory, they have tight ends. They still got Tank Dell. They got Mechie. They got enough to not score a point in the second half. That's really, really bad. That really is. I mean, one touchdown in the second half wins you this game pretty easily. And that's what's crazy to me is I thought the Texans were just going to be so potent on offense. And it's really, really difficult for them to score. And then early in the game, Joe Mixon, who is running the ball well, is like freaking out on the sideline. It's like, what is going on? Bobby Slowick, you got D'Amico, defense is locked. They got guys in and out of the lineup. They're banged up, and they're still playing their ass off. But offensively, Slowick, for a guy that got held to high regard, he's like the Shanahan guy, little genius, former PFF guy, does feel like it's unraveled a little bit. And I think sometimes we put these guys on a pedestal, and then it's like, okay, it's a long season. We got 17 weeks. And tonight was a tough one for the offensive coordinator. It really was. And Aaron Glenn, who I think the last couple of years was kind of the weak link viewed by Lions fans and people that watch the Lions, he's done a really, really good job. He had the one moment, and I was critical on Monday night against Seattle. But it turns out that game was a little bit of an outlier because tonight, if the defense falls apart with him throwing a bunch of interceptions and turning the ball over, I mean, they could have got destroyed. But they kind of held their mud, and now the Lions feel like are about to have their best regular season in the history of the franchise, which is really cool. And the Texans got some serious shit to figure out. The NFL season is rolling along, and contenders are starting to separate from the pack. But one thing has not changed, and that's DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. And it's the number one place to do what I love to do, bet some touchdowns. Whether it's a fade, whether it's a Hail Mary, whether it's a sweep where 3 tackles are broken and a dude goes 60 yards, we do not care because we love to bet touchdowns, and DraftKings is the place to do it. Ready to place your first bet? Try betting something as simple as scoring a touchdown. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your first pick. And here's a reason for new customers to do a touchdown dance of their own. Bet $5 to get 200 in bonus bets instantly. Score big with DraftKings Sportsbook, the number one place to bet touchdowns. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Use the code JOHN, J-O-H-N. That's code JOHN for new customers to get 200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Now, speaking of stuff to figure out, we have some serious disasters right now in the NFL. I went on with Colin earlier today, and we talked about a lot of these situations, but I think that we even need to go more in depth of just truly how ugly some of these current state of the NFL franchises are. I mean, especially when you factor in the hype behind them. It's pretty rare. Like every year, you're going to have bad teams. Look at last year. Let's just look at who drafted one. Carolina. It's like, yeah, they've sucked for a while. Washington, like they've sucked most of Dan Snyder's era. The New England Patriots, like they had kind of been bad for a couple years. That's why Belichick was on the hot seat, right? The Chargers, like Brandon Staley's a joke. This year we got teams circling that top pick who some viewed as playoff teams, some viewed as teams that could win their conference. And if we were just doing a disaster rankings, I think it's pretty unequivocally the Chicago Bears. Because the Jets, one, they've always sucked. And this notion that their coaching, we'll dive into them in a second, but the Bears finished strong last year. And most people thought that their defense could be one of the best in the league. You had this number one overall pick who I would say like Trevor Lawrence and Andrew Luck level hype for 3 years in college. The hype behind Caleb Williams started his freshman year at Oklahoma. He has been abysmal. He has been a disaster. If you just watch the game today, him versus Drake May, and you knew nothing about college football, you never watched these guys play. You didn't even know anything about the draft. You didn't know where they were drafted. I just told you both these two guys are first-year starting quarterbacks, and both their teams are kind of in shambles. But the Bears have a way better team and have way better offensive weapons for the quarterback to throw to. Both offensive lines are not very good. Just watch the game and tell me what you think after. What quarterback would you rather have? There would not be a soul that would watch that game and come away and say they would rather have Caleb Williams than Drake May. Caleb Williams right now looks like a scrub. He really does. And listen, everyone, and understandably and rightfully so, is shitting on the coaching staff. Eberflus, dead man walking, by the time you listen to this, maybe he gets fired. Though I think historically the Bears have never fired a coach in season, so they'll probably let it play out. Obviously, Shane Waldron, not going well. But if you just watch Caleb play, there's no other takeaway than like, this guy's not good at football right now. And you watch Drake May play, you go, God, I kind of like this. Like, obviously, Jaden has a more buttoned up operation. Dan Quinn, good coach. Cliff, clearly a good offensive coordinator. They got some running backs. McLaurin's a good player, depending on McCaffrey's brother. Catch some balls. Like, it's not like they're super loaded at wide receiver, but you watch Jaden play and you go, that's a big time player. If you've watched Bo Nix over the course of the season, you're like, kind of gets better every week. Is he ever going to be some superstar? Probably not. But that's a starting quarterback in the NFL. Then you watch Caleb and you just like leave. Like, what am I missing? And I'm not trying to act like I didn't like him in college. I thought he was really talented. I would have taken him number one overall. But like that, the draft happened. He went number one overall. And he's on the Bears. His star wide receiver, DJ Moore, I think it's pretty clear, does not like him. That's kind of a problem. It'd be one thing, DJ Moore has got a little like T.O. and, Antonio Brown to him. No, it feels like DJ's kind of got along with everybody and played with a lot of shitty quarterbacks and produced. And this guy is so much worse than every guy he's played with. He's just kind of snapping. Now, he was clearly a Justin Fields guy, but I think if you ask him halfway through the season, like, of course I was Justin Fields guy. Look at the guy I'm playing with. And there were some people, and I'm not acting like I was one of them, that said, listen, this guy can't play from within the pocket. And I always think, like, if he's talented enough, coach him up, his wide receivers are good enough, you'll figure it out. But you watch him from the pocket, it's atrocious. His deep ball accuracy isn't even close. Eberflus, all these guys are going to get fired. It's inevitable. It's happening. Could happen this week, could happen in 3 weeks, could happen at the end of the season. This team sucks. Easy to blame the coaches. Totally get it. But the quarterback's been really, really bad. I mean, really bad. And the reason I was a believer in this team, because, like, how's the quarterback not going to be solid? He's got Keenan Allen. He's got Cole Kmet. He's got DJ Moore, who dominates if I was playing wide receiver. They drafted Rome Odunze in the first round. It's like, how are you not going to be just, like, minimum average? This guy isn't even close to below average. He's just a really, really bad player. And that effort today to lose 19-3 in their last 3 games, 15-9-3. 15-9-3. This team is getting worked right now. I mean, today is one of the uglier games you'll ever see. Like, we'll get to the Jets here in a second. Like, Aaron Rodgers is 40 years old. Their coach has already been fired. Like, what did anyone expect? Devontae's not quite what he once was. Their defense sucks. Sauce Gardner probably has had one of the more disappointing seasons of any young bright star. The Jets stink. We know that. Anyone that bet on them to win the division is got to be on drugs. And I mean really potent drugs, because that's crazy. But if you thought they were going to be better, okay, it's like, yeah, that's old players. But then we had early evidence like this is going to be a disaster. Team's old. I get it. But the Bears being this bad to lose to the Patriots, who we all thought was an embarrassment as an organization and as a roster, for them to kick your ass. Oh, yeah, the game was in Chicago. I don't see how you shake that. Like, I understand, like, obviously the Jets are a disaster. They're not far behind, but we get it. Like, they sold their soul and it blew up in their face and it's over. And this franchise is going to have a new coach, a new GM. Who knows? Rodgers retires. It's a disaster. The thing with the Bears, like, these are your guys. Like DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, Cole Kmet, Caleb Williams. Like, that's your squad for the next, like, 3 or 4 years. That's like your core players. Like, that's your crew. And it's like, is Bill Walsh just going to show up and fix it? Maybe, but I think there are enough concerns to be like, I said this to Colin. You know, if you go back to Jared Goff's rookie year, Jeff Fisher's season, really ugly. That was the year Richard Sherman, I think, took him out on the sideline. Looked like he couldn't play in the NFL. But if anyone could come and just get him pointed in the right direction, Jared Goff in college was a dominant pocket quarterback. That's what he did well. He didn't run well. It's not like he had some huge bazooka arm. He was a pocket quarterback. So if you could do a good enough job building the team, like, that was his skill set, playing from within the pocket. That to me is the number one question with Caleb. Like, he just doesn't look comfortable in that. And that's the thing with Jaden that's so crazy. It's like, God, this guy's just natural within the pocket. He's very comfortable from throwing within the tackle box. And that's something right now that Caleb, I don't know. And I think he's playing so shitty. Who knows how interesting this job is going to be? I mean, this is not a franchise that pays a lot of money. Like the Jets job. Who's going to be interested in the Jets job? Honestly, who? Bunch of old players, bunch of bad contracts. Sauce Gardner's going to want a ton of money. He's not playing well. Garrett Wilson's going to want a ton of money. You got no quarterback. You could argue whoever takes over the Jets, what you should do, trade everybody. Just yank that thing down to the studs. The Bears, like, it was already yanked to the studs. This is your core. Like the Cowboys. Like, was anyone shocked watching that game today? Team sucks. They do not have much talent on the field. I liked Cooper Rush when he had played in the past. But he played on really good teams. Their defense was excellent. So he just had to kind of manage the game. They could run the ball. Now they're handing the ball off to Ezekiel Elliott, who was just left at home last week for not showing up on time to meetings. He fumbled the ball. The Eagles landed on the ball today. Again, another symbolic Zeke Elliott moment, who all I'd heard, and I just assumed they were correct, super high-level guy, Dak's BFF, leader, guy people gravitate to in the locker room. It's like, you just left it. How often do guys that people gravitate to in the locker room at 30 years old or 31 years old or however old he is have to be left at home for showing continuously late to meetings? Of course the Cowboys got their ass kicked. Obviously, with Dak Prescott being on the sideline, even if he had played in the game, they got no chance in that game. I parlayed today. Nice little hit for me. The Eagles -7.5 in the Arizona Cardinals. Now, I didn't feel going into the game like, yeah, listen, Arizona at home as a dog, like, that's just good value. I don't know what Jets team I'm going to get, but more often than not, I get a bad Jets team, so I'll take my chances. I was 100% confident the Eagles were winning that thing by double digits. And honestly, they sleptwalked early in the game, which is understandable because they watched this team on film. They're like, this team sucks. This is the team that we've gone head-to-head with for the last 3 years, trying to win the division. They've won it a couple times. We've won it once. We probably should have won it twice. It ain't the team anymore. Then you got Dak or Micah after the game saying, He doesn't care about Mike McCarthy. You can go read the quotes. I don't want to screw it up, but it's pretty like it's just like God. This team is just all over the map, and this is Jerry's doing. Jerry creates this team. Everyone knows that Jerry's in charge, not the head coach. The head coach is dead man walking. His contract's running up, and I said the best thing that ever happened to this team is to keep on losing, a lot like the Chargers last year. Because what happened? They ended up with the 5th overall pick. Well, that's not just for the first round. That's every round. Now, they found their starting right tackle. I look up today, McConkey's making a play. Part of that also is, though, getting the right coach. They got Jim Harbaugh. Can the Cowboys? I don't know. Can I tell you about my friends at True Classic? Ball's here, and it's time to step up your game. Right now, you can unlock big savings when you bundle packs. Just go to my exclusive link at trueclassic.com/John to save. That's trueclassic.com/JOHN. Shop now and elevate your wardrobe. Here's the thing. I wear the same couple t-shirts because I own a lot of them every day. I like to keep it simple. I don't want to think too much. I'm a podcaster. I don't need to dress up. True Classic sent me a bunch of t-shirts. You can see me rocking it right now. They fit great. I actually just ordered multiple 6-packs. A 6-pack of black t-shirts and a 6-pack of gray t-shirts. In these packs, if you don't want one color, you can mix and match. White, blue. I kind of have a darker green on right now. They fit great. I was asking Maria earlier. I'm like, how do I look? She's like, God, you look pretty good in that. I'm like, yeah, I know. That's why I ordered more. They also sent me a pair of joggers and a pair of boxer briefs. Shirts that design your best features with a perfect fit. They really do. Kind of make me look buff. They fit well around my midsection. Cannot recommend them enough. You can mix and match, like I said, and 100% perfect fit. Guarantee and easy returns. So the fall is here. Like I said, step up your game right now. You can unlock big savings when you bundle packs. Just go to my exclusive link at trueclassic.com/John to save. That's trueclassic.com/JOHN. Shop now and elevate your wardrobe today. I didn't watch much of this game. I mean, I had it on one of the 4 boxes, but it was every time I looked up, nothing was really happening. The Jags lost with Mac Jones. He threw for 111 yards. He threw 2 interceptions, and he also fumbled. I just don't. I feel for Jags fans. I actually think they've played relatively hard in a lot of their losses. Even the day the game was close, but that's a tough watch. You would, I think I would legitimately had to be paid to watch every snap of Mac Jones. And I said this a long time ago when Belichick drafted the guy. In the history of the league, guys like Mac Jones went on the 3rd day of the draft. Now, I get inflationary times when it comes to quarterbacks, but I don't care what quarterback inflation equals. If you take that guy in the 1st round, let alone the 15th overall pick, that's nuts. I said it when everyone said that Kyle Shanahan was going to draft Mac Jones with a 3rd overall pick, that would have been the most arrogant and insane pick in the history of the National Football League. And I don't even think there would have been a close second. At the moment he picked him, that would have been nuts. This guy is a fringe backup. And as time will go on, that this guy went 15th overall. And listen, that draft also, I mean, it was historically bad. Trey Lance cannot win the backup job to Cooper Rush. Zach Wilson is also the 3rd string quarterback. Beside Trevor Lawrence, who isn't that good, and also now injured, at least Justin Fields is an NFL player. But man, couple guys that just need to get a shot out. Jonathan Gannon took a lot of shit when they lost that Super Bowl, and rightfully so. I mean, Andy called a couple plays, and the guys walked right in the end zone. The Eagles probably should have won that Super Bowl. But I've told Colin this before. I think I've mentioned it on this show. Is my friends that worked for the Eagles loved him. They didn't like him. They loved him. And they all said that they thought that this guy would be a better head coach than he was a coordinator. Just a fantastic leader. Very, very good with players. You could call this staff like the millennial Cardinals. Gannon is 41, born in 1983. Their offensive coordinator, bald guy, Petzing, is 37 years old, born, I think, in 87. Their defensive coordinator, Nick Rallis, was born in 1993. He's currently the youngest coordinator in the NFL. Beside Buda Baker, I'm not sure they have great personnel on defense. For the last couple weeks against the Bears and the Jets, they played their ass off. And offensively, like Kyler's been fantastic. Since Kyler came back from that injury last year, they're 9-9. Like, this is a playoff team. Their quarterback is playing really, really well. Trey McBride looks like George Kittle. James Conner is one of the best running backs in the NFL. Marvin Harrison was a top, 5 pick for a reason. He's an excellent player. Like, their offense is real. And because of their quarterback's running and passing dynamic, it's very difficult to play. They can obviously run the ball with Connor. Their quarterback can also run the ball, and passing, like, he literally can do it all. He can throw from the pocket. He's accurate. He can throw on the move. He's got a big arm. He can stretch the field. Like, Kyler's a freak talent. There's a reason a guy 5'9", 5'10" was a no doubt about it #1 overall pick. I mean, we talk about some of those guys, the Zach Wilsons, the Mac Jones, the Trey Lance. You could combine all those guys. Their talent doesn't sniff half of Kyler's. The question with Kyler was always like focus. And now he's got this thing going with the kind of the bandana. He looks like he'd be a guitarist for a band that would have been playing at Woodstock back in the late 60s. And he's jamming because right now he fucking looks awesome. They're 6-4. And it's not one of those like, how are they doing this? Like, you watch them, it's like they got real players. Their team plays their ass off. And their coaching staff is a bunch of young dudes. And that team is just vibing right now. That was these last 2 weeks, and you can listen. Bears, Jets, disasters. No one's disputing that. The Cardinals treated them like if in high school, the varsity scrimmage the JV. That's what those games the last 2 weeks look like. They were an underdog today at home. Game was never remotely close. In the second half, I honestly thought they were going to injure Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers cannot move anymore. And I don't exactly know who's rushing the passer for the Arizona Cardinals, but they were flying around. And last but not least, Jim Harbaugh. The Chargers won 5 games last year. It's November 10th, and they have 6 wins. I'm really disappointed I didn't do this because I kind of got talked out of it by some of you guys. I like the Chargers to make the playoffs. And you could have got it at 4-1 before the season. Chargers are in the playoffs. The Chargers are going to be, more than likely, the 6th seed. Technically, they could be the 5 seed, but if I was a betting man, I would say they end up at the 6th seed. Pittsburgh, Baltimore, winner of that division ends up as the 2 or 3 seed. And the loser of that division more than likely ends up at the 5, and the Chargers end up at the 6. Possibly that team ends up at the 6, Chargers end up at the 5. But either way, here's what I know, and I told Colin this. The Broncos might make the playoffs as well, and they would be the 7th seed. The Broncos are going to be 1 and done. They would not win a playoff game. I think the Chargers are going to be the team as like a 3, 4, 5 point underdog in round 1 that all the big money sharps lay the house on. And I think they got upset potential written all over them. All this guy does, think how many coaches. When I was a kid, most coaches did this. They worked in college football. They became dominant there. Jimmy Johnson, national championship, Barry Switzer, dominate. And then they go to the pros. That was always the trajectory. Most guys don't go to college, go to the pros, dominate in both, then go back to college, dominate, and then go back to the pros. I don't think we've ever seen a coach like this. Urban Meyer, Jim's rival, right, when he was at Ohio State. And Urban dominated him. Elite college coach. Beside Nick Saban, the best college coach the last 25 years. He couldn't even make it through 1 season in the pros. He couldn't make it through 1 season. That's how fast they ran him out of town. He was laughed at. Steve Spurrier got ran out of the NFL within like 2 years. Bobby Petrino, Nick Saban. This guy dominated in college football. Just won the national championship. And honestly, the previous year, it wasn't for one of the weirdest Final Four games. Should have been in the national championship against Georgia. Probably lose that game, but still should have been in back-to-back national championships. Has already been to 3 conference championships and a Super Bowl, and is going to come to the NFL. Had to cut a bunch of offensive players because his cap was all out of whack. Drafts a tackle, number 5 overall. And all of a sudden, probably by December, he's going to have 9 wins. I'm telling you, this team within a couple years is going to be a Super Bowl contender. It is amazing what Jim Harbaugh is doing. He can coach in either. In the NIL, the transfer portal era, every coach is freaking out. He dominated it. We saw him go to a BCS game with Andrew Luck well before that at a school that should never be good at football. And beside the Jim Harbaugh and a couple years of David Shaw, is mostly shitty at football. This guy wins everywhere he goes. I don't know how he does it. Everyone I know that's around him says he's a complete nut job, weird guy. Every interview you see, he's a little out there. But when you give this guy a whistle and you give him your team polo, whether you're Stanford, whether you're the Niners, whether you're Michigan, when you're the Chargers, for 100% certainty, this fucking guy is going to win way more games than he loses. It's a fact. And there aren't many facts in football. How many guys can I take from college right now and put on the Bears next year and go, it's a lock, this guy's winning 10 games? There might not be one. How many guys in the NFL? Like, I couldn't just take Kyle Shanahan or Sean McVay or LaFleur and put them next year at, like, you pick a school, USC, and just have them 11 wins, 10 wins. Who knows? Maybe they would just be thrown off by the recruiting. They wouldn't even know how to do it. This guy can do them both. Most human beings, including like myself, yourself, anyone listening, we're only good at a couple things. And just because you're good at coaching football does not mean you can coach both college and pro, because they're like 2 completely different industries. And yet this guy's kind of mastered it. And if he wins the Super Bowl, you could argue that's probably more impressive than ever, given that he won a national title in the NIL transfer portal era, and then he won a Super Bowl with the fucking Chargers. That would be even more crazy. It's like if Dan Campbell wins a Super Bowl. Listen, if Dan Campbell had been hired by the Green Bay Packers or the Pittsburgh Steelers, it would be impressive. Like, this guy's a Super Bowl champ. This guy might win a Super Bowl with the Lions. Jim Harbaugh, you know what his crowning achievement is? Winning a Super Bowl with the Chargers. If he's able to do that in the next 3 or 4 years, that's way more impressive than what he did at Michigan. And what he did at Michigan was really impressive. Adios. Have a good night. What a day of ball.